Attacks incoming. No matter what happens, we have to make sure that we...
And I'm not giving up. Just like you. Right, Mako? Rubicon Protocol. We don't have many options left. But we do have orders. Rubicon Protocol.
Stop or slow the Banished by any means necessary.
And keep Zeta Halo out of their control. Buy Earth as much time as we can. We keep fighting for everyone we've lost. For everyone back on Earth. We never stop.
We have only one objective now. It is not victory. It is not extraction. It is not even survival. We must deny the Banished this ring, no matter what it costs us.
Hey Halo fans, Games Akimbo here. I wanted to discuss something that's been on my mind ever since Halo Infinite's campaign launched. I'd love to know what you agree with as well as anything you don't, so if you feel at any point during this video that you get an impulse to comment, please don't hesitate. For anyone that does comment, I'll reply or leave them a heart so you can see that I've read it. So if you're ready, then we can begin. During the very opening of Halo Infinite's campaign, players go on to experience a 6-month time gap, after which, when the Master Chief finally awakens, together he and the player find the UNSC, Halo, and Cortana destroyed in the aftermath of the Banished invasion. Players are left with question after question, yet despite the community curiosity that this game generated, we only get a few clues to these mysteries during the mainline missions, as it seems that most of the attention is paid to the present situation on Halo. This makes sense as we get to personify the Master Chief, and he has priorities. He has orders that focus him on stopping Escharum and the Harbinger. While the Chief remains stoic and respectful of those who have died for Earth and her colonies, he seemingly lingers little on the fallen soldiers and the time he's lost over the last half year. So having to look outside the main story, we found that many of the answers we were looking for could be found in the audio logs that are scattered around Zeta's open world. Unfortunately, while hiding clues, they would truly only serve to spark more questions, such as, where are the remaining Spartans? And what happened to them? Did any other Spartans survive? But after collecting all the audio and listening to them carefully, the questions that lingered on in my mind started to become obsessed with things like, what exactly is Rubicon Protocol? What does it mean? Where does it come from? And could there be a greater overall story implication at play? To find the answers I was looking for, I first had to look back in time, much further back than 6 months. In fact, the first stop on our investigative journey has us looking back into Italy's history as far back as 49 BCE. But don't worry, this isn't a history channel, so we'll go right back to the military sci-fi shortly. But it is important to note that the history of the Halo universe is based as if it was literally our real-life future. Anything that happened in our past will also have happened in the past of the Halo universe. So while the political state of Rome in 49 BCE is a bit too complicated for me to comment on fully, I will say that in a time when Julius Caesar was only general and governor, he was ordered to return to Rome and retire from his tour. His term of governorship had ended, and the Senate ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome. Caesar was desperate to keep his position of power, and luckily for him, he was well liked politically and had great support amongst his army. So instead of surrendering, he ordered his army to march on Rome. Now, before any of that, Caesar was appointed to be the governor over a region that ranged from southern Gaul to Illyricum, the northern border of which was marked by the river Rubicon. It was also important to note that it was illegal to bring armies into Italy when it was not specifically ordered, and to do so was considered an act of treason. His crossing the river under arms would be synonymous with a declaration of war on the state. So while standing on the banks of the Rubicon, Julius Caesar stopped and looked at the water, likely pondering the consequences of his actions for a while, before uttering the phrase "Ali elacta est," meaning the die is cast, before treading to the other side. Crossing the Rubicon is now a common phrase to say passing a point of no return. This action set forth a civil war that ultimately led to Caesar's dictatorship and is often attributed to what would ultimately cause the fall of ancient Rome itself. Adding more evidence that this is the origin of the protocol, the phrase casting the die was also used as the chapter head on Halo Waypoint when 343 announced Kelly Gay's new book by the now familiar name Halo: The Rubicon Protocol. But more on that in just a minute. For now, the main question added to my mental query was, how do irreversible actions apply to Spartans? What kind of die would a Spartan be casting? What metaphorical river could a Spartan never uncross? Is Rubicon Protocol maybe suggesting something like suicide missions? To find out, let's continue our investigation. Moving back to what we find in the game's audio files, these fly-on-the-wall-like recordings, if interpreted correctly, give us more insight to what kind of duties are required by Rubicon Protocol. Captain Lasky, well featured extensively in other 343 titles like Halo 4 and 5, as well as side stories in the universe such as Spartan Ops and Forward Unto Dawn, is seemingly reduced to a couple audio log appearances. Though, while listening to his final words as he escapes the Affinity, we get a possible glimpse as to what the protocol may entail. As his dropship loses signal, we hear through static the captain say,
No matter what happens, we have to make sure that
but before he finishes, he's interrupted by loss of signal. But in those final words, as the fate of the captain is still unknown, he confesses a key detail, quote, no matter what, end quote. With this, we see that it's a primary, above all else, directive. Later in the story of the audio logs, Spartan Griffin, while mortally wounded at the hands of Escharum, sends a one-way radio communication to the mortal Reverie. In it, he states,
We have only one objective now. It is not victory, it is not extraction, it is not even survival. We must deny the Banished this ring, no matter what it costs us.
This statement seemingly reflects on what we learned about ancient history, as well as what the captain said before he went missing, that this protocol is a last resort, and that once enacted may result in the death of a Spartan. After the attack and fall of the Mortal Reverie, the remaining Spartans radio together to communicate reconnaissance and set in place a plan to deal with the overwhelming Banished forces pressing in around them. Spartan Sorrel speaks up, reminding the group,
We're scattered, and control of the ring is in Escherum's reach. We don't have many options left, but we do have orders.
Spartan Vettel responds with a sigh before simply confirming out loud.
Rubicon Protocol.
Spartan Makovich then attempts to clarify, stating for the record,
Stop or slow the Banished by any means necessary.
Sorrel then concludes with,
And keep Zeta Halo out of their control. Buy Earth as much time as we can.
From this information, the common consensus amongst players was that Rubicon Protocol is an anti-banished protocol designed to keep Halo from being used against the Earth. But while that's close to the conclusion I've now reached, we still have some research to comb through. Where the well-known Cole Protocol was designed to specifically erase data that would limit the enemy's ability to find Earth, both the quote from before and the name the Rubicon Protocol itself suggest that this is a different kind of approach to asset denial. You have crossed the proverbial Rubicon, and the die has been cast. It's clear that what the Banished stand to gain is absolutely unacceptable, and the only remaining resort is to ensure they don't get it, no matter what the cost. If you aspired to collect all the Spartan logs in the campaign, you are rewarded with the Rubicon Protocol achievement. Having no more audio logs reference this new UNSC procedure, this achievement seemingly signifies our research ending, as far as UNSC procedure and audio logs goes anyway. But in actuality, this is in fact a clue to the next step on our investigation. Achievements are often used to signify the player completing an objective. The naming of these achievements often takes on a name, something akin to a chapter head on a book. Saying Rubicon Protocol to the player when hearing the whole story of the Spartans on Zeta is like saying that that chapter of the story has ended, and in turn is called Rubicon Protocol. This ideology has even been confirmed. Stepping out of the game world and into the real one for a minute, 343 has announced several upcoming books. As I briefly mentioned earlier, one of these books shares a name with both our chapter and achievement titles, as well as our mystery protocol. Halo: The Rubicon Protocol is the title of an upcoming Halo novel that was written by Kelly Gay. The plot follows surviving members of the UNSC as they mount a resistance against the Banished, following the ambush of the Infinity. The novel was originally set to be released sometime near the launch of Halo Infinite, but was later delayed to March 15th, 2022, and then delayed again till August 9th that same year. So while the book is not yet published at the time I'm recording this, the release description and cover give us hints about its upcoming content. Quote, 2560, humanity finds its back against the wall after the United Nations Space Command flagship Infinity drops out of slip space into a devastating ambush launched by the Banished. As this fierce enemy alliance seeks to claim a powerful weapon hidden within the ancient Forerunner ring world known at Zeta Halo, the surviving UNSC forces now find themselves compromised and its leadership out of reach, with the remaining personnel forced to abandon ship and take their chances on the fractured, unpredictable surface of the Halo ring. Now, survival in this strange, alien environment, whether for Spartan super soldiers or those who never thought they would see the battle up close, is measured day to day against a relentless and brutal adversary that always has the upper hand. Desperation grows, but the will to keep on fighting and enduring no matter the odds is never in doubt, even as the Banished seek to unleash a frightening new enemy that could doom them all." End quote. On this topic, Halo Waypoint's Cannon Fodder had this to say, quote, "As you may have been piecing together throughout previous trailers and information drops, Halo Infinite's campaign begins roughly 6 months after UNSC forces were ambushed at Zeta Halo. During that time, the UNSC have been mounting a resistance on a shorn fragment of the ring, desperately trying to hold out long enough for hope to arrive. In Halo the Rubicon Protocol, you'll get a unique glimpse of humanity's struggle to survive amongst a growing Banished occupation that takes place in that period." End quote. Regarding the content of the novel, Jeff Easterling of 343 stated, quote, "The Halo Infinite campaign begins about 6 months after UNSC troops are ambushed at Zeta Halo." Easterling later said, "Perhaps players will also find a scattered story in the open world area of Halo Infinite that leads to this book." Given this description, we can now safely assume that the book as well as the Spartan audio logs share a story. That does spark quite a question though. Who are the Spartans on the cover and what are their fates? When reading through Cannon Fodder, we find where this answer is hidden. Quote, "Last year, we showed you the absolutely stunning cover created by William Pixelflare Cameron, and while you'll have to wait a bit longer for more details, we can confirm that the characters on the cover are Spartans Horvath, Stone, and Kovan, each of whom had some presence in Halo Infinite's audio logs." End quote. If you remember, we combed through the audio logs earlier. In them, we hear the moments right before a few Spartans die, or in Griffin's case, is captured. These Spartans are the same Spartans that we find in-game as Chief, so we know they are dead. We find their bodies. That is Spartan Stone, Griffin, Makovich, and Sorel. But there are a few other Spartans whose fates are seemingly unknown. These soldiers remaining after in-game audio logs are Spartan Kovan, who goes missing, Spartan Horvath, who heads up north, up the eastern side of the ring looking for survivors, and Spartans Rosito and Jade, whose last known location was Annex Ridge, just before hijacking a Phantom and disappearing. Hoping to know the fates of these Spartans, you might think that we'd have to wait until the book releases, as we have already exhausted our campaign collectibles, and for a couple that still remains true. But there's a deep, dark secret to Halo Infinite, that about a year before its release, 1/3 of its in-game content was cut. Hoping to find the conclusions to our mysteries, the community began to dig deep into the game's files, hoping to find pieces of what had been lost. And while I won't tell you the boring details of scanning through obscurely named audio files, I will tell you what we found. And combined with what new evidence can be found in the audiobook previews, could we even be on the brink of some kind of Halo content cover-up? Only weeks after Halo Infinite's launch, PC users discovered cut audio logs. With these hidden audio files now available for the community to hear, some wondered if the audio had been suppressed to promote book sales. Let's continue our investigation into what may have been cutting content for the sake of greed. Well, first off, how do we even know for sure the content heard in the audio logs is going to be the same as what's written in the book? Luckily for us, 343 has actually made this easy. On July 8th, Halo's YouTube published a preview of Halo the Rubicon Protocol's audiobook, giving us a taste of the story and how it seemingly selects different Spartans per perspective and then follows them for a while before jumping to a new perspective. A writing and editing style I've heard referenced as Back at the Ranch, where after a character's story starts to slow in momentum, the perspective switches to another character and something happening somewhere else. This is done most of the time to keep the tension rising, and in my opinion was significantly popularized in the science fiction genre by franchises like Star Wars. This matches the way the audio logs are broken up into different recordings from each Spartan suit, switching from perspective to perspective as you collect and listen to more. Secondly, we hear word for word an exact quote from one of Spartan Stone's logs. Have a listen for yourself.
Racing positions. Landfall on the ring in 5 seconds. Sound off, Marines!
We're good, Spartan Stone. Bumps and bruises. Not much else.
Copy that. Soon as I blow the hatch, we fan out in pairs. The ring's already crawling with Banished. Be ready for anything. You all right, Marine?
Yeah, just for all the trouble these things are supposed to cause, I guess I never thought the surface of the ring would look so beautiful.
Landfall on the ring in 5 seconds. Those 5 seconds happened in an instant. The lifeboat slammed into the ground at a steep angle with an ear-splitting boom. The lifeboat rapidly slowed, finally coming to a stop. Stone turned in the broken seat. "Sound off, Marines." "We're good, Spartan Stone," came a female reply. "Bumps and bruises, not much else." "Copy that." A miracle everyone had survived. Then again, the day was still young. With that thought, Stone disengaged her harness and pushed herself to her feet. Her helmet light flared through the passenger cabin, beaming on the 5 occupants, all relatively unharmed. An incredible relief. "Soon as I blow the hatch," she said, "we fan out in pairs. The ring's already crawling with Banished. Be ready for anything." Daylight flooded inside as she disengaged the door release. Stone unshouldered her M395 rifle, already scanning the area for potential threats as she poked her head outside. She left the lifeboat, making sure everyone was out before heading to the edge of the rocks to get a visual on their surroundings. Behind them, a wide grassy plateau led to rocky foothills and hundreds of acres of high alpine forest that stretched right up to the base of a massive snow-capped mountain range. In the sky, drop pods, evac craft, troop carriers, and burning debris rained down toward the surface like meteors. "Whoa," one of the Marines marveled, having followed her. She glanced down. "You all right, Marine?" "Yeah, just for all the trouble these things are supposed to cause. I guess I never thought the surface of the ring would look so beautiful."
The reader even pauses the same way in the audiobook to show for sure this is meant to be the same. Also, one of my friends, known as Halo Guy on YouTube, used the audiobook to seemingly locate Spartan Stone's life pod based on what is previewed, showing to me the game and the book had to have been developed together. To solidify it even more, after posting that video, Halo Guy got reached out to and had his video confirmed by Halo's official YouTube and Hyperius. So it would seem that we have a strong foundation for the legitimacy of these cut files being real parts of the canon story, regardless of them being cut from the launch. So now onto the content of the files themselves. To put all of this as plainly as possible, there are 2 kinds of audio files that can be found. Ones that are all edited, mixed, and ready to be published, and some that have to be built like an audio puzzle if their content is to be restored. The ones that need to be built end up being more trivial, but do fill in some time gaps in the story of the Spartans occupying Zeta, and hopefully I'll get to cover those in a future video. But as we start moving on to the more complete forms of audio, we find these ones are just the same as the collectible ones seen in the game, but cut nonetheless. As in, it's these completed but removed audio logs that is what has our main attention, since they seem to directly continue the story from where the in-game audio logs left off. Hope that makes sense. So as previously mentioned, the remaining Spartans after in-game audio logs are Kovan, Horvath, Rosita, and Jade. Could it be that these cut audio logs we've scavenged hold the secrets and answers we've been looking for? This is where we run into some spoiler territory, folks. If you want to skip any spoilers, simply click to this timestamp or use the chapters to move past it. But if the cut content is indeed canon, there will be parts of the upcoming book and maybe even parts of Halo Infinite DLC that is going to be definitely spoiled. And hey, if you just decide to click off the video to avoid spoilers, that's fine too. Just be sure to give it a like before you go so that you can find this video again when you're ready for the content. Okay, ready? You've been warned. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Well, first up, we seemingly have a message from Spartan Griffin to his squad.
In the event that this operation undergoes a catastrophic loss of viability, we move to a protocol designed explicitly as a last resort. Under no circumstances can anyone or anything retain control of the ring installation and its capacity to be used against Earth. We cannot afford to fail.
And then another from Kovan to her squad of Marines.
Protocol states, in the event of a catastrophic loss of military assets, remaining UNSC forces must execute hit-and-run tactics against the enemy. Prevent any use of this weapon against mankind, no matter what it costs us.
From this, we seem to get a more clear understanding of what exactly the details of Rubicon Protocol are. Combining all known spoken definitions, here's the conclusion for what we've found Rubicon Protocol to probably actually mean in lore. Our collective definition is, in the event of a catastrophic loss of military asset, or in the event that an operation undergoes a catastrophic loss of viability, the UNSC will initiate Rubicon Protocol, which is designed explicitly as a last resort. Once enacted, any remaining UNSC forces must execute hit-and-run tactics against the enemy, and stop or slow the enemy by any means necessary. Under no circumstances can anyone or anything retain control of a Forerunner installation, and its capacity to be used against Earth. Prevent any use of Forerunner weapons against Earth and mankind, no matter what the cost. Once this protocol is initiated, there is no room for failure. With this reorganized definition, we can now see that the actions of every Spartan and Marine makes significantly more sense. Even Chief, before he knows the fate of anyone of the Infinity or on Halo, his priorities switch from getting home and stopping Cortana to stopping the Banished and protecting Earth at almost the drop of a hat. Here are 3 moments from the campaign that show you what I mean, and make the point that Chief is also following Rubicon Protocol.
Infinity.
UNSC Infinity. Class, Supercarrier. Crew size, 7,150. Not found.
Near field perimeter scan.
1,986. UNSC tags detected.
Status.
Deceased.
Your forces occupy the ring. Within hours, it will be under our control. Humanity will cower before your legacy. They will burn.
We have a new problem. No, we do our duty. Protect humanity, whatever the cost. The Banished plan to wipe us out. All of us. We have a new mission, soldier. Our only way home is straight through the heart of the Banished.
On a side note, Chief and Cortana have always done this in games and books.
We're cutting it close.
Here we go.
Fancy a look?
Did anyone else make it?
Scanning. Just dust and echoes. We're all that's left. We did what we had to do. For Earth.
That structure in the center of the city, it's a Forerunner ship. And Truth is heading straight for it. If he leads the Covenant fleet to Earth, they won't stand a chance. You have to stop him.
That brute has the Index. And Miranda and Johnson. He can activate the ring.
If he does, I'll detonate in Emberclad's reactor just like we did the Autumns. The blast will destroy this city and the ring. Not a very original plan, but we know it'll work. No, I don't want to chance a remote detonation. I need to stay here.
With respect, Cortana has a solution.
Cortana? Did you see her condition? How damaged she is?
She could be corrupted for all we know. Her solution could be a flood trap.
We should go through the portal. Find out for sure.
What we should do, Commander, is understand, clearly, that this is humanity's final stand. Here, at Earth. We go, we risk everything. Every last man, woman, and child. If we stand our ground, we might just have a chance.
No. If your construct is wrong, then the Flood is already won.
I'll find Cortana's solution. And I'll bring it back.
Earth is all we have left. You trust Cortana that much?
Sir. Yes, sir.
This is either the best decision you've ever made or the worst. Hell of it is, Chief.
I doubt I'll live long enough to find out which.
This isn't about us or this ship anymore.
Sir, we've seen what the Didact is capable of. If we let him leave this world, humanity will be at risk.
Sir, what if he's right?
Nav, as soon as we know we're airtight, I want a course laid into Carinate Station. Com, prepare a warning beacon.
I will not allow you to leave this planet!
I'm ordering you to remove that AI data chip and retire it for final dispensation.
I don't want to. You don't want me to.
Remove the chip now, Commander. Give me that chip.
The Didact has to be stopped. If you won't do that, I will.
Captain!
Arrest him!
Captain!
Get word to Earth that trouble is coming. Cortana and I will do what we can back here.
Are you okay? I monitored the data pulse. I could hear them.
We need to move.
These people are gone.
And more will follow if the Didact reaches Earth.
Their past actions, and maybe the failure to act by Captain Del Rio to protect Earth from the Didact, may likely be the initial reason and events that led to the UNSC creating the Rubicon Protocol in the first place.
Sierra 117 to UNSC Infinity. Captain Del Rio, do you read?
Chief, it's Lasky. Is that you?
Affirmative, sir. Where's the captain?
Fleet Comm didn't take too kindly to his abandoning you on Requiem. I'm afraid I'll have to do.
And yet, still you fail.
This is even more remarkable when you consider how later in the campaign, before the Chief deals with the Harbinger, he goes to save Fernando Esparza, aka Echo 216, showing how much he cares for the pilot, blatantly disobeying orders and acting on a rash, emotional outburst, putting Earth and humanity at risk, allowing the Harbinger vital time to free the Endless, all for loyalty, showing the Master Chief to be more human and less of a machine than almost ever before, putting Echo 216 on the same pedestal as Captain Keyes, Sergeant Johnson, and Lasky.
I failed her. I will not fail you.
Okay, let's get up.
Chief? Chief? A Spartan killer. He doesn't stand a chance.
Track it.
Already doing it.
Open a gate. Find somewhere close.
It's not that simple.
Why?
Okay, it's kind of simple, but risky.
We save him, or die trying.
There's a pretty high chance that could happen. It's hard to lock down the coordinates.
Do it.
Portal's open!
Leave me. Run!
We'll get you out of here.
Foreshadowed long ago from Halo 4's heartbreaking ending.
I can give you over 40,000 reasons why I know that sun isn't real. I'll never actually know if it looks real, if it feels real. Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
You don't talk much, do you? Chief, I won't pretend to know how you feel. I mean, I've lost people I care about, but never anything like you're going through.
Our duty as soldiers is to protect humanity, whatever the cost.
You say that like soldiers and humanity are two different things. And soldiers aren't machines. We're just people. I'll let you have the deck to yourself.
She said that to me once. About being a machine.
With our definition now grounded on what exactly Rubicon Protocol is, we can now finish our investigation as to the potential contents of the book. Now, let's see how these cut audio logs treat our remaining Spartans. First up, Kovan.
Confirmed kill. And that's 2. Fish in the barrel, Spartan.
I'm seeing movement at the end of the convoy. What is it?
They're breaking formation. Did we tip them off?
No, they know we're here. Svaro, any movement on the ridgeline? Lateral to my position.
Nothing. Wait. There is something. Headed your way. Moving fast.
Data corrupted. Reconstructing.
Lieutenant, your position is compromised. Gather the squad, ditch the equipment, and go. Now.
No way. Are you crazy? We're not leaving you.
No choice. I have multiple banished infantry on my tail, and something else. I'm gonna draw them up the mountain. Run before it's...
At last, the sniper. Did you think we would leave you unanswered for so long? Nothing can escape the hand of Atriox forever. Shall we finish her now, Commander? No. Let her know anguish. I want her to hear the suffering of her friends. Hunt them down. You. No. All the Spartans will soon be little more than a memory.
Kovan seems to meet her end at the hand of Hyperius, a cruel, barbaric member of the Hand of Atriox. And we may even be able to confirm this is the case by looking at the brute's armor. Much like how there's speculation on Locke's death due to his armor being adorned by this same chieftain, if you look at the human finger necklace, there are green armored ones, just like Kovan's green camo coating would suggest she'd have. Next, Horvath.
This is a one-way message to any local UNSC forces. This is Spartan Horvath, Fireteam Intrepid. I've been separated from any UNSC personnel for almost 60 days. It's clear we're losing this battle, if we haven't already lost it. I've discovered what appears to be a banished training site, and I've made a positive visual confirmation of a VIP inside. No doubt about it. It's Escharum. This might be my only shot at slowing the Banished down, so I'm going to engage. Intrepid, it was a pleasure serving with you the last 4 years. I hope you're still out there, somewhere. Still fighting, still surviving. Godspeed, my friends. Over and out. There. Take a nap while I get a peek at your boss. Brothers, the fire of your wrath glows brightly. It's no accident you are here. For in destruction, I see potential. In trials, I offer opportunity. Prove your resolve. Parade your might. Become the Hand of Atriox. He's recruiting. I won't get another shot at him. Not like this.
Hey, Dogface! You looking for Spartans to kill? I'm here! Let's get acquainted!
Data corrupted. Reconstructing.
Impressive. You've culled the weak from our ranks. Thank you. But I'm afraid your time is up.
Shut your mouth and fight.
By your leave, Spartan. I'll grant you this. Your will is stronger than your body. But you're merely practice. An animal brought to slaughter. But most of all, you're a pale shadow of him.
After looking for survivors up the northeast side, Horvath sees an opportunity to initiate Rubicon Protocol and claims that he is going to try and take out Escharum while he has the chance. After infiltrating the House of Reckoning, he tries to take on the whole Banished army by himself, just like the Chief would later do. But while he fights valiantly, Horvath instead fails and falls to Escharum's superior numbers and might, being equated to a mere shadow of the Master Chief. As you can now see as we put the pieces together, the Spartans on the cover of the book all seem to be dead. I would consider that an interesting way to do things, unless you were to suppress the audio logs that suggested their deaths in the first place. But I'll come back to that in just a minute. Next up, we also have Vettel.
I'm tired of prisoner transport duty, Malagor. Of what use is the tower now? Escharum wields total control of this ring. Most of the humans lay defeated, slaughtered. Most, not all. Patience, brother. Our work will soon be over. The human blight upon this ring will be utterly extinguished.
Still here?
A Spartan! Kill him!
Data corrupted. Reconstructing.
No. Next stop's a prison.
Spartan!
I'll admit, I am surprised to find you here. You Spartans are a dying breed of late. It matters not. You will not reach the tower. My captives will remain my captives, and you will die.
You talk too much.
Your wounds are unfortunate. Even broken, you're a better prize than most. Let's see what you're made of, Spartan.
As you can hear, he faces Chaklock and tries to reach and free Griffin, but we know he fails because we know that Griffin is still in the tower during the campaign, and now we see that Vettel potentially died to try and free him. I'm starting to see a pattern here, that all these Spartans, well, brave, fall short of becoming legends, and where they fail, the Master Chief would succeed time and time and time again, showing just how much of a legend he truly is. Last up is a weird one. The remaining Spartans unaccounted for so far in our kill count are Spartan duo Rosito and Jade. These super soldiers were last known to be on Annex Ridge investigating stone rings before they decided to stow away on a dropship with rings. They stated they wanted to know where the Banished were taking them, then we never hear from them again, as well as there being no cut audio logs that feature them. They seemingly disappear without a trace, but as with most things, I have a hunch. While combing through the game's files, we see that most audio logs are labeled with names. One of the exclusions to this rule is seen in Spartan Jade and Rosito's file names. Their audio log is labeled Mandrilban, and while this seems irrelevant, there is one other file with that same name. It seems to be a sound effect for a phantom explosion. I assume Mandrilban is our connection, and that once the Spartans were found out to be in the Phantom, it was shot down. With no Spartan bodies to be found at the crashed ring ship, I suppose they could still be out there, or stuck, dead, still inside the ship, or adjacent crates, now resting derelict on the side of a mountain's peak. So putting all of this together, all that I know, and what knowledge I previously had from the campaign, here's my prediction synopsis for the not yet released Halo book, The Rubicon Protocol. I'm going to bet that it starts while the Infinity is still in slipspace traveling towards Zeta Halo, during which we'll see a few conversations between those we've already come to know, and primarily focusing on Spartans Stone, Griffin, Vettel, Horvath, Makovich, and Sorel. Starting with a briefing from Griffin, we'll get a description of exactly what to expect from Rubicon Protocol. Then, while the ship is preparing the weapons deployment, the Infinity is ambushed by the Banished. All Spartans do their best to hold off the invasion, while also evacuating as many crucial members of the crew as possible. An example being Captain Lasky and Dr. Halsey. On a quick side note, I think Dr. Halsey is likely safe with Palmer, as we hear nothing about them post-Infinity ambush. This is the best case for both characters, as putting them together is really the only way for their two characters to develop any further. Back to the main plot, with Makovich defending evacuees in space between Halo and the Infinity. She likely does her best to defend the Mortal Reverie, and any drop pods before she is shot down and escapes her disabled saber. During this, all of our main cast Spartans make it to the ground relatively safely. Kovan shoots straight through an enemy Phantom and takes it out, while Spartans like Horvath and Stone take a life pod down. One crashes into a fight meeting up with his squad, and the other finds herself on a less hectic and somehow strikingly beautiful part of the ring. Lastly, you have the Spartans coming down in Pelicans. That's Griffin, Vettel, and Sorel. Sorel's Pelican is shot down near the front lines and digs in for survival, whereas Griffin redirects his and Vettel's Pelican to land near the anti-aircraft guns in order to disable them. During this time, they fight to try and reach a rally spot to regroup and make a plan. But during their travels and fighting, they notice a light from a northern Forerunner structure. Then, almost without warning, there is a slipspace-like explosion of light and power, and the ring starts to shake itself to pieces. Griffin's squad is relatively unharmed by the blast, whereas Stone's team was closer, and they were only safe because Stone orders them back into the drop pod to shield them from the blast, and then risks her own life to pull the pod from falling off the side of a cliff. But not everyone was so lucky. A huge amount of UNSC forces were consumed by the blast and debris. Some of the casualties were Horvath's squad, who are now MIA. And to add to that, Horvath is suddenly stranded alone on the east side of the spine. But with every gray cloud, a silver lining, as a large amount of banished forces were also instantly defeated, allowing Sorel to pull back from the front lines and begin to regroup. After the ground stops shaking, Makovich finds the Mortal Reverie and sends word to Griffin saying, "This is where the UNSC should rally." Griffin agrees like home away from home is a good idea, so they get word to a few close-range Spartans to meet there. On their way, Griffin and Stone would both save some Marines and supplies while heading to the new rally point. For a short time, they use the Reverie as a base of operations and conduct recon and guerrilla-type warfare against the enemy, attempting to save survivors and make a plan to stand against the Banished. As for the Spartans located further away, like Sorel, he keeps an eye on the spine, and eventually Stone goes poking her nose into that as well. Sorel is interested in how the Banished appear to be attempting unconventional repairs, and it's Sorel's report that inspires Stone's recon with her squad, attempting to find a weakness in the spine. It seems the ring is repairing itself, but maybe if they could keep the ring in pieces, it wouldn't be able to harm anyone, right? During this time, the Banished are dealing with the loss of their leader, as well as relying on a new one. Kovan and Griffin hatch a plan to take out Escharum, based on reports of infighting amongst the Banished. Hit them while they're down. That's the theory anyway. The remaining Spartans at the Reverie make a plan to send a randomly elected squad to assassinate the Banished leadership, and Vettel is entrusted with the leadership of the UNSC forces defending the Reverie. At this point in the book, I hope we get to see what happens to Spartans, Rosito, and Jade as they hijack that Phantom, but they likely just get shot down with very little consequence to the story. But now onto what I consider the best parts. While Stone and her party are returning to the Reverie, she gets distracted by some crates of Hydras and rockets and chooses to get those for any upcoming fights, and doesn't return to the base right away. At this time, the assassination plan is underway and failing. The entire elected team, save Griffin, falls, and he too is severely wounded and barely escapes with his life. Griffin relays a message back to home base to warn them that the Banished are coming, that Tremonius is leading every member of the Banished on their way to the Reverie and to fully enact Rubicon Protocol. That was the last thing Griffin was ever able to do before he was captured. Kovan, Makovich, and Vettel received this message, and while they consider for a short time to run, they decide to take make a stand and get ready for the oncoming assault. During this time, Horvath is slowly making his way north around the Banished encampments, using his stealth to his advantage, attempting to find any survivors outside the Banished territory. Stone, now with her supplies, starts to head back to the Reverie, but is cut off by the approaching Banished. She declares to the Reverie via radio that their attackers would be there by nightfall. The Spartans held off wave after wave of Banished, only to be consistently outnumbered. Finally, the hard decision is made to retreat and abandon the Reverie, hoping some that were there survived to fight back another day. After dispersing the UNSC presence at the Reverie, the remaining Spartans are scattered, and this is the beginning of the end. Kovan begins to try and slowly whittle down the Banished numbers using her sniping skills to attempt to hide at long distances and take out as many as she can. Horvath declares he's heading even further north outside of Banished territory, thinking nothing better to do than seek out his missing squad mates. But while he's doing that, he discovers the House of Reckoning, where he identifies a high-value target, named Eshram. Following Rubicon Protocol, he says his goodbyes and attempts to take out the Banished leader. While taking on the entirety of the Banished home base, Horvath would fall in battle, and having just failed to stop the forming of the Hand of Atriox. Going back to Kovan, she is heavily assaulted, killed, and possibly eaten by the two brute brothers, who were two recent recruits of the Hand of Atriox. Stone maintains her position to do recon on the Banished activities at the Reverie. She notices a base they have made, as well as how they have started excavating foreigner devices that she's never seen before, later on to be revealed as the Silexes. Oh, and on a side note, I'm almost positive that the Reverie attack is where Lucas, our resident Harbinger releaser, is probably abducted by the Banished. Stone relays her recon to Makovich, Vettel, and Kovan. Vettel wants to abandon Rubicon Protocol and go find and rescue Griffin, whereas Makovich and Sorel desire to make a plan. Vettel goes off on his own, captures and tortures a brute to find out where Griffin's being kept, but when he tries to go to the tower, he meets and fights Chaklock. The Gold Elite refuses to have any of his prisoners freed, so cuts down Vettel in what I can only assume was an unfair fight. Stone, still back at the Reverie, notices the Banished forces are splitting up and that most of the forces are moving to a new dig site, someplace called the Conservatory. Passing this information along, she sees an opportunity to sneak inside the now accessible foreigner facility under the Reverie, as she wants to take a peek at what the Banished were doing down there. Sorel and Makovich make their way to the new dig site, and they make a plan to get inside the Conservatory. Stone makes her way down into the belly of the ring and discovers the Silexes, confusing them for control modules at first before seeing the glowing glyphs representative of biological forms inside. While desperately trying to relay this message, something goes awry. Lucas Browning is forced to open the Harbinger Silex directly above Stone, cutting her off from her squad and causing a big blue beam to shoot into the sky. It seems that Stone's position's getting a little too hot for her liking, and the remaining Banished forces at the Reverie base begin to start moving inside towards her. Seeing this and attempting to repay the favor for saving their lives so many times, her squad of Marines use their rockets, hydras, and some technical work to fire anything they had at that base, including the onboard guns mounted on the outside of the Reverie. Anything to buy Spartan Stone some time, but it would only work temporarily. While all of this was happening, I'm sure it was Jaga that started to sneak through and kill everyone, and then snuck up and killed Spartan Stone, while she was attempting to locate a mysterious UNSC signal down in the Forerunner chambers. Probably the weapon, as she's not located too far away at this point. Now, with the tunnel open to the Conservatory, it's time for Makovich and Sorel to make their final move. Once inside, Jaga manages to separate Makovich from Sorel and kills her. Sorel tries his best to push forward and find the monitor, but ends up running into the same brute brothers from before, just like Kovan, and is killed. Though, we know he put up one hell of a fight due to how he's still gripping the screwdriver as a weapon, even in death. Then, just after all the dust settles, and you think all hope is lost, Chief gets woken up in a pelican. So now that we're through all that, let's just quickly welcome back anyone that skipped the spoilers. Thanks for sticking with me on this. Having all that being said, with this book being written at the same time the game was being developed, that prompted an interesting question. At least to me it did. Let me know what you think, okay? Did they cut these audio logs to purposefully incentivize you to purchase the book or not? Personally, I think so. I mean, obviously, I believe that. I made a big long video about it. But I'm very interested to hear what you, the viewer, have to think about all this. Do you think 343 took content out of their game to put it in a book instead? Or do you think maybe I'm just being unfair? Do you think that maybe these audio logs were just unfinished or potentially held back for DLC? I can't wait to discuss this more in the comments, because I think having these audio logs in the game could really resolve Halo Infinite of some of its sins. The biggest crime for me is that during the campaign, no one truly feels like a threat to you. Okay, maybe Bassus does. He's a little scary, but no one else does. Unless you find the in-game and cut audio logs to know what your enemy has done over the last 6 months. We have the first Halo with actual boss fights, and we know nothing of the bosses we fight. And with all this cut audio, it just exacerbates the problem. No boss in Halo Infinite gets a proper introduction to the Master Chief, besides Escharum and the Harbinger. Everyone else is just left to be shoehorned in, something to slow the player down temporarily. But even then, we don't know what they're about. Escharum doesn't trust the Harbinger at all, but you wouldn't know that unless you picked up the collectibles. And even though the cut audio logs are there to beautifully mirror Chief's later actions, no one would know that unless they dug into the game's files. And that's what I mean by Halo Infinite's biggest crime, the story. It's vast and breathtaking, but only a few data miners and book lovers get to know and truly appreciate the whole thing. I actually really hope that 343 add these back into the game someday, but for anyone who just paid and played the game the way that 343 intended, they just end up missing out. Honestly, I'm not telling anyone to not buy the book. I'm gonna buy it and see how close I get. I'm sure it's gonna be great, as most Halo novels end up being. What if there's a big twist out there I couldn't predict? Or if they change a bunch of stuff since launch? I'd hate to miss out on it. And with what can be heard in the third audio preview, I already see it will be well worth my and your time. Over this project, I've fallen in love with these characters and the setting, and I can't wait for more stories in the future. And lastly, if you're interested in hearing the cut audio and you want all the audio logs in order so that you can get the full story clearly, I have a video you can check out in the description. It's long, but worth at least checking out, I promise. So the next time you're out playing the open world in Halo Infinite, just think to yourself, this world was built to tell stories, and it's up to you, the player, to find and tell them. This game breathes mystery and danger. It creates curiosity and fear. It teases tense, split-second decisions around every corner. It puts the die in your hand and asks if you have the courage to cast it. It asks, are you going to cross the Rubicon and become a legend? If you have any suggestions for any Halo topics you'd like me to cover in the future, again, the comment section awaits you. And if you've made it all the way to the end of the video, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel? I plan on making so much more deep Halo content, and it would go a long way to supporting the channel, and mean the world to me. And as always, thank you for watching.